what can I expect in terms of account support, and how do you handle turnover? So in the vendor world, as well as the dealership world, there is turnover, right? There's a lot, wouldn't you say? um, and so how you handle that is pretty important. So the first part of this question is, what can I expect in terms of account support? There's various forms of support out there. I think by and large, a lot of the just call around robin support is not as common. But is it one-to-one support? Do I have a designated account manager? Is it a pod? Is it a group of people that manage, several accounts together? Or is it a call-in kind of round robin, whoever answers the phone is going to try to help you support? That's important to know, especially down the road when you're wanting to get things done. What we did was just put together just a few things. Again, this is definitely not a comprehensive list, but things that you should look for are signs that you might not be getting the best support, right? You don't know the name of your account manager, so that's important. Obviously, if you have round robin support and you're okay with that and you think that call-in support is working for you, by all means continue. But if you have an account manager and you don't know that person's name, clearly a red flag. Number two, your inquiries are constantly avoided for more than 48 hours. Now, this is a hot button, right, with dealership and vendor world. The dealership is running 7 days a week, and many agencies aren't necessarily running 7 days a week. It depends on the particular product, right? But really, by and large, if you reach out and ask a question, I would lean more towards, my expectation would be I get an answer that day, or I at least get a response that tells me I'm not going to get an answer that day. I'm, out of the country, and such and such is the one who's following up. You should hear from this person. If you don't, please reach out to them. But you should never be sitting and waiting for an answer from someone you're paying to answer you, right? You wouldn't accept that if Alex, you're in the other room and I'm the general manager and you're the salesperson, and I send you an email and say, hey, what's going on? And you just ignore it for 2 days, it'd probably be an issue, right? So response times are an early indicator that maybe something's off with your support. Making changes or updates seems painful. So it's always going to be a little bit of a give and take between your agency, your vendor, your partner, and yourself. But if you're trying to make changes and it's always met with deadlines and sorry, that's going to be a turnaround, that's a red flag that we've heard from a lot of dealers that, hey, this might not work. This might not be a good relationship if we can't get this done.
And this happens a lot over time too.
It does, and sometimes if you don't have a good handoff model, right? You have a rep that's really good, and now you get handed off, and nobody really tells you about it, and now you have somebody who doesn't know the expectation. What I found in my days working with support as well as working in product, the key here is the relationship. It really is. It's a lot easier to pick up the phone from somebody that you know their name, you know the expectation and the response, and that back and forth becomes a lot more seamless. When it's cold calling, essentially, who wants to pick up their phone and cold call 16 vendors in a day? And conversely, when I worked in support with dealerships, I wanted to get to know them. I wanted to know if they were the type that wanted to, text, or they wanted to email, or they wanted to talk on the phone. I wanted to know if they wanted to be on the phone for a long time. You get to know the personality of the person you're working with. That's the way that it works. When there's a disconnect there, it's worth addressing. Maybe it's not a red flag. Maybe, just the account person that you're assigned to and you just don't mesh. Don't be afraid to ask, hey, it's no offense to them, but I'd love to have a new rep. Is that possible?
It happens in dealerships all the time. That's why we have the TO.
Yeah. So remember that's the same relationship you should have with your vendor, is the ability to say, hey, it's no offense, but I'm paying money. I shouldn't have to sit and maybe have a relationship with somebody who I just don't get along with. That relationship is super important. All right. So collaboration on a good digital strategy is non-existent. So that's a lot of words to say this. If you're talking high level numbers, but no strategy, that's a problem. If the only conversations you're having are, two things happened, we sent the email went out, they opened it, it was great. You should be having more of a strategic conversation. There should be a conversation of, here's what we did, here's the results, and here, what I say, typically rule of thumb, if they don't have something new to offer, it's a red flag. If they're not saying to you, hey, I'd recommend we try this, it doesn't mean you have to say yes. But if they're not bringing those ideas to the table, Are they really active in the industry, or are they just kind of doing the RMV, right? Where you go to the registry, that's fresh on my mind because I had to go recently. You pick a number, you walk up there, and they say, oh, that's the wrong number. You have to go fill out this form. Instead of really giving you good detail, they're just pushing back on you and saying, nope, sorry, here's the results of this. There should be a discussion, whether it's quarterly or monthly or weekly, that's on you, but at least quarterly, right? You should be having a discussion of, this is our strategy, this is what's working, and here's what we recommend. The Sat-Yam scenario appears. So that for those of you who don't know, the Sat-Yam scenario just basically indicates if you start to see evidence of cover-up or evidence of some type of nefarious behavior, then dig deeper, because it probably is there. So my best example of this is, your vendor is reporting to you 1 month, and they say, look at these metrics, we're up in visits, we're up in this, and these are great. And then the next month that you do a review, they say, hey, look at these metrics, and the metrics are different, right? And they're all good, but they're different metrics. What happened to the metrics that were good last month? That's a huge red flag. Especially in digital advertising, you have to report on the successes and the failures. I'll go back to the investment scenario. If I'm investing money in 5 different areas with my retirement account, and they come to me 1 month and say, hey, these 3 areas performed really well. And I say, hey, that's great. And then the next month they give me 2 different areas that did okay. I want to know what's happening. I want to know what's happening with my money in the areas that I've spent that things didn't go well, because I want to know what we're going to do to fix that. If you're just covering that up, so that's a good example. But really, anytime you get the feel of, hey, they're not wanting to give me access to Google Ads, or they're showing me different metrics every month, and it's changing, and they all look positive, or maybe they're claiming these sales all came from us, instead of saying, hey, here's how we contributed to this sale. That's a red flag. That's definitely something that you'd want to look into. So high staff turnover. Obviously there's turnover. If you're good at what you do, you're going to get promoted. If you're bad at what you do, you might be out the door. There's burnout in advertising, just like there is in a lot of industries. This is very similar to what we experience in the dealership world. But what would you do if, a salesperson is gone? What do you have, right? You have orphan leads. What do you do as a good manager within the dealership? You call those people and say, hey, I'm sorry, let's pick this back up. Let's make sure that we don't have an interruption of service. If you're seeing staff turnover a lot and you're not getting notified on that, that could mean, hey, it's perfectly valid to say, hey, what's going on, right? Hey, I've had 3 reps in the past 3 months. It's, things are going okay for now, but I want to know what's happening. Why am I losing reps so often? Again, they're your employee in a sense. You've hired this agency. They should be able to answer that for you, and there should be an open, transparent conversation. So the other thing we put, when churn does happen, because we know that it happens in dealerships, it happens everywhere. What are the things that they should be doing when that churn happens? And so this is the type of thing too. You can call them up and say, here's my expectation when things happen. I expect you to let me know ahead of time, or let me know when something's happened right away. I don't want to be emailing somebody and find out they're not there, because that takes precious time away from an already very busy and hectic schedule. So when churn happens, when is your last day working on my account? They should tell you. In a perfect world, they're letting you know when that last day is, but make sure you know when that last day is. Who will be handling my account after you leave? Pretty common sense, right? They should, again, in a perfect world, they're showing you that, hey, heads up, I'm on my way up or out. Here's the new person. I want to get you on the phone. I want to introduce you. Again, that relationship is so important. When should I expect to hear from my new account manager? And finally, always get their manager's information for sure. If that's not on that handoff email, which you should be getting, or that handoff phone call or conference call, really is how it would work. Ask for that info, but also know that that's a little bit of a red flag if they're expecting someone's going to leave in your business, your strategy is just dropped on the floor. And this is just to drive it home. Great account support is not optional. It's just not. You wouldn't accept it in other areas. That doesn't mean that they're perfect. It doesn't mean that they're going to answer all these questions, beautifully and everything's going to line up and it's going to be a perfect world. But having good account support is not an option when you're delivering a service, especially in one that has to be such a give and take of knowledge, working with a local business in a local market.